This is Ruth Freeman, and I'm the founder of Peace at Home Parenting and a licensed clinical social worker.
Hi, I'm Joanne. I'm a retired professor from the University of Connecticut, where I was the director of the Early Childhood Education Training Program. And I'm an infant mental health advocate, researcher, and leader.
And Joanne knows everything there is to know about birth to 5 years old in my experience. Joanne, I haven't asked you a question you couldn't answer, I just want to say.
Oh boy.
Or at least found an answer.
Yeah.
So our focus today is young children and behavior challenges and being emotionally overwhelmed. And I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, so I've certainly seen it up front.
So this is the story that she told us. Our 6-year-old son is really struggling when he hears the word no. He throws his hands in the air and says, "Fine, so I don't get whatever he wanted. That's just great. Thanks a lot, Mom. You really made my day bad." I can say it like this because I've experienced this. I usually say, "I can see this is really disappointing for you. I'm sorry." Sometimes it ends there, but the majority of the time he walks away, comes back and says, "So, I'm not going to get whatever I wanted? And that's not fair. I hate you. You're a dum-dum." And oftentimes he starts throwing things or hitting. If I'm feeling particularly patient, I acknowledge his feelings again and offer a hug. If I'm busy doing something, I will usually just stop responding. In the past, I've yelled at him for the behavior. My husband and I are working very hard to rein in our anger. We have come a long way. There used to be yelling in the house daily. It's less frequent now, but we recognize the damage has been done. He gets one-on-one time with his father at bedtime and with me when he gets off the bus. Okay. So, these are really great insights that this mom has. She's doing some things really well, and yet she's feeling challenged because he can still become defiant and get very angry. And this is very, very common among children who are anywhere from 3 to 8 years of age. Everywhere, all the time, all the kids behave like this at some point. And I'm hoping that what she's experiencing is that as she has noticed that her own yelling has declined, also that the frequency of these kinds of events are also declining. Because that really, they do tend to go hand in hand, and it will continue to persist at a less frequent pace, even after you have stopped with, your contribution, to the climate. And so persisting with this patience and repeating the very same phrase in a monotone. "I'm sorry that you're disappointed."
Joanne,
places that I begin.
So I would say a couple of things. This mom is very self-reflective, which is great. I love when parents think about our behavior, not just the kids' behavior, and how all that's interacting. And she's recognizing there was lots of yelling, and kids, we teach them a tap dance. How do they get it? How do they get contact with us? So if escalation is one of the ways of getting contact, and mom isn't escalating anymore, he's just still doing the tap dance, and now she's doing a tango. So he has to learn the new dance. How do I get attention from mom?
Yeah, that's a nice way of phrasing it. Different dances.
I see there's no yelling in our house, but our 7-year-old is even worse, swearing, hitting, throwing things. So there's a couple of things to think about here. One is that, first of all, the circumstances, at least I can observe in my granddaughter, her parents actually have moved temporarily. She lost her nanny. She lost her block, her friends on her block. She lost her playground. She had tremendous losses. And all of us had, the grown-ups and the kids. So with those losses comes more emotional display. And Joanne often reminds people that the emotional center of the brain in young children is more developed than the thinking part of the brain. And we often talk about helping kids to manage their emotions. one of the things that helps is what Joanne illustrated, which is narrating what's going on for them. So when he says, I can't have anything, I have the worst life, you're saying, wow, you're super frustrated that you can't go to McDonald's right now. It's super disappointing. So you're kind of affirming him, you're letting him know he's being seen, and you're giving him some language. And Joanne, you've often talked about co-regulation, where with babies, we rock them, we sing to them, we soothe them, and our calming brain helps them calm down. But the truth is, kids need this all the way through adolescence, especially in adolescence, actually.
Yeah.
So our ability to calm down in the face of his distress is essential, because we mirror each other's emotions. And I just worked with a family the other day, and each person in the family, the mom, the dad, and the nanny, all had grown up with either a lot of judgment or criticism or angry yelling. So when the child yelled or got angry, even this child isn't even yelling, he's just like, being very dramatic, the parents would feel this distress partly from memory, partly from feeling like I'm a bad parent if my kid is, calling me a dum dum. So two things are happening. We get triggered from our history, and then also we have thoughts in our head that aren't actually based on child development. So we're telling ourselves, oh, the other parents in the neighborhood aren't having kids call them a dum dum. But in fact, this is going on all over the place, and it's relatively normal. But if you tell yourself you're a bad parent when this happens, you start to get in there and you want to fix it and you want to make it go away. For this parent, I'm like, yeah, this happens. And, stay calm, reflect, move on. Nothing terrible is happening. There's no red flags here. And I think this is one of the biggest issues, is that parents sometimes feel this so intensely or interpret it as so difficult. I have trouble figuring out how to respond when it comes to my daughter hitting or throwing things. Joanne, can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So we've been working on this with some other families, and we've come up with some guidelines around how to approach designing a routine for this situation. And that's number one, is that you have a routine that you can rely on and that will guide you. And I recommend that you sit down and you write it out, because you want to rehearse this a bit, because you are being emotionally challenged at a very high level, especially if the child is threatening to or actually destroys things that matter to him or her. And kids will do this when they are in this internal thunderstorm, which is what these emotional tantrums, meltdowns actually are. Their brain is completely on fire. They can't listen very well. And what is important while they are in the storm is that you switch to become less verbal, say as little as possible, get reasonably close, use the child's name and make some eye contact. If you need to stop the child from hitting, you can more or less come around and hold the child's hands while speaking. You might hold the hands out in front of you and say, I love you. We need to quiet now. And holding your calm as much as possible. You need to say the behavior that you want them to do, not using the word not. I just use not. Don't do that. Say what you want. So I'm going to hold Jacob's hands, and I'm going to say, Jacob, I love you. We need to calm now. Let's go to the quiet place, or let's sit down over on the couch. Whatever it is that you want them to do, that's what you focus on in that moment.
And I would emphasize the importance of calming your own brain first. Don't even approach the child until you can calm your brain. And here at Peace at Home Parenting, we're telling parents to find your brain calming practice. For me, it's a certain kind of breath. It might be a visualization of a certain place or a person you find soothing, but do it 5 minutes a day when you're not under pressure, so that you can do it in the moment. So This isn't this, your Headspace app is great if you do that regularly, but you can't grab that when your kid is flipping out. So you have to have that brain calming practice that you can do yourself without any tools in that moment. We're having severe issues with getting dressed, shoes on. This has been on and on a couple of years, and hard to know what is truly sensory or defiant behavior versus itchy skin, eczema. I've tried so many things, but we both end up yelling many days.
This is one of the interesting things about sensory issues, is that they are often expressed as behaviors. So when a child is overstimulated, okay, like let's use me as an example. I'm getting visually overstimulated trying to track multiple feeds that are coming in. And I can sit and focus and push my mind to just go to one place. But in fact, children with sensory issues are going to get that stimulation and they're going to want to get away from it. And that means that they are going to run out of the room. They'll start screaming. They can hit to try and get something to stop. And all of these behaviors we consider to be problem behaviors. But in fact, what they are is communicating. I need help. I got to change something. It doesn't feel right. And it can become very disorganizing for the child quite quickly. And this is really very true of children 5 and under. But I'm sure it's also true as children are older, 6, 7, and 8 years of age.
And I would do a little problem solving with the child when it's not happening. I would ask them to tell you which clothes are comfortable. My daughter couldn't stand seams. She only wore a certain brand of clothing. She couldn't stand.
Yeah, my grandson couldn't stand labels.
Yep, labels, and seams in socks. I had to get only certain kinds of socks, and there were, and there may be only certain things that are comfortable. So you do a little problem solving together. It depends on her age or his age, and I think that telling yourself it's going to take an hour to get dressed. I mean, I watched my daughter let her 2-year-old get dressed, and she would start it like an hour before, and it would take her an hour to do the whole thing. But if you kind of plan ahead that way, and also asking yourself, what does the child have to wear? Like you're talking about shoes and socks, but if you're actually staying home, maybe they can go barefoot.
I've worked with a couple of parents that have found, that they were having very difficult dressing in the morning. Getting ready to get out, behaviors, interfering, refusals, silliness, and on and on. And you know what it was about? It was about getting the parents' attention, because this turned out to be a time before everybody went off in the day when they could actually engage one-on-one with the parent. So you have to do 2 things here. One is to act preventatively and make sure that you are spending 15 or 20 minutes at another time where you are giving undivided, individual, playful attention to the child. Can be reading a book, but doing it playfully or calmly, depending on what the moment needs. Then, when it comes time for the dressing, you don't need to be doing very much other than setting the expectations. Give the child control over between 2 types of socks, 2 types of shoes, 2 types of shirts. Which ones do you want? Pick them out, put them over here, put the others away, and then say, I'll see you downstairs. And put on a timer and leave the room. If you come back up and the child has only gotten one thing put on, what you do is you say, hey, that's great, you got started. I'm getting ready to leave, so let's see if you can put on 2 more things. And put the timer on for 2 minutes. So if it's taking an hour right now, first of all, start with an expectation that it's going to take 15 minutes. So cut out a lot of the stuff. And then set the timer for 5 minutes and come back. You'll get some progress, praise it. Encourage 1 or 2 more things. Come back another time, and 5 minutes later and say, I didn't think you'd get anything put on, but look at you. You're almost done. You've only got, a shirt and some pants to put on. And then get silly, right? This is one that Ruth loves. Get silly. Take the pants and put them on your head and say, it's a hat. I thought I gave you pants, but it's a hat. And, then get into the, okay, what can you do with these pants? Where can you put them?
Yeah, and playfulness calms the brain and it opens kids to learning. And it's paradoxical because as we get stressed, we get less playful. And really building two things Joanne described was playfulness, and she described what we call praise that works. So she only has her socks on. We really wanted the pants on, and our brain goes to the pants that are not on. That's what our brains automatically do. But what you want to do is, yikes, you have both socks on? Woohoo! How long do you think it'll take you to get your pants on? I'll be back in 2 minutes. See if you can do it. Out. And you have to accept that she may not have the shirt on. The shirt may never get on. It may have to get on in the car, or she may not have her shirt on that day if she's at home. And letting some of that go. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let's get her as dressed as we can for now. She may decide to put her shirt on. You say, I'm going to bring the shirt out into the living room, and you can get on your preschool, whatever, with your t-shirt on, whatever. And lowering the expectations, increasing the positive reinforcement for any progress, and being more playful. And this is really hard if you feel stressed and she's going to daycare, but you got to be willing to take her to daycare, put her jacket on over no shirt, and bring the shirt with you. When I talk to people about the morning routine, Joanne, you touched on this. When I talk about the morning routine, what I encourage parents to try to do is to do the hard parts before the connecting parts. We're often rushing kids to say goodbye from us, and they're just digging their heels in to not say goodbye. So in our family, we used to have a sit-down breakfast every morning. So getting dressed meant you got to the breakfast table to sit down with mom and dad. It didn't mean get dressed and get in the car, goodbye. So
Right.
you're trying to get dressed in order to move towards something pleasurable. It's going to be a little easier. I'm not saying this is all going away. And when you have a pattern like this, kids are routinized into the pattern. And as you change it, they may get worse temporarily because they're going back to the cha-cha and you're trying the waltz. So as you try this new thing, it may get worse temporarily. And please stay in touch with us. This would be a great topic for this private group. Post it again, ask parents what they're doing. Parents may have other suggestions. We have a lot of professionals in the group. And let's keep working on this, because this issue of being oppositional when we're supposed to get started to the day or making transitions is a very common one, and we can do a lot of talking about it. But I want to capture a couple of other things.
I really love that idea, Ruth. I just want to underscore it, of putting the getting dressed in order to connect.
Yeah.
Lots of parents are doing, the connecting in bed. So kids joining parents in bed, parent joining kids in their bed, and reading a book together and having this really lovely time. But might be interesting to get dressed and then connect.
Yeah. Or have a special thing that happens. We do charades before you go, or we read that special book, or we do a dance party. My daughter's fabulous with dance parties with young children, and they have an Alexa dance party stream, and they put the dance part. So let's see if we can get dressed and do our dance party before we leave for school today, or whatever the kids love, or we can have a tea party for breakfast. I want to bring up this question, Joanne, because it's another very common thing we hear about. I have a boy turning 3 next week, so still 2. And lately we've had issues getting him to focus on eating at breakfast and dinner. He's in daycare throughout the day and has lunch there and eats everything per the teacher. This sudden loss of interest in eating is just recent. He was gaining weight and now he's lost some. At breakfast, he wants to be looking at a screen and perusing a sales ad. Now, this kid did not figure out to look at a screen and peruse a sales ad on his own. He had a model for this. So I just want to call the parent out on this. When we're at the table, it's really important that all of us only eat. This is really important. Mealtime is associated with better outcomes for kids in so many ways, including academic outcomes. And it's amazing, mealtimes. And mealtimes in families should be sacred. And that means we're at the table. That means we don't walk around eating. That means we're all paying attention. Parents don't pick up phones. We don't, have screens on. The mealtime happens the same way every day. It can be one meal a day, and I hope that you can do 2. I hope you can do a calm breakfast and a calm dinner. But however you do it, the mealtime is a time of connecting. It's a social time. It's not a time to lecture your kids on food. Sorry, I got carried away. At dinner time, we're trying to break him wanting phone screen time. At dinner time, about halfway through, he says he needs to use the bathroom, and then the focus is broken, and it's hard to get him to start eating again. What's going on? We see a nutritionist, but I don't really think that's the issue. I want to say a couple of things. One is and I sent this mom a link to 0 to 3, which is a fabulous resource, and they use materials by Ellen Satter, ELLYNSATTER. And I consider Ellen Satter the be all and end all of feeding children. Yep. And he basically says this: it's your job to choose the place where they eat, when they eat, and what food is offered. That's entirely your job. When they eat, where they eat, and what food is offered. She also says that it's entirely children's job to decide whether they're going to eat and how much to eat. So I'm gonna review this because this sort of blows parents' minds. It's children's jobs entirely to decide whether they're going to eat and how much they're going to eat. So that means that when you're at the table, you're not saying 2 more broccolis for your chocolate pudding. You're not making any food deals. You're not even really commenting on their eating. Right. The dinner time should be a social, connecting, wonderful time. You know, kids can eat nothing. And when you're deciding, remember, you're deciding what's offered, when, and where. So that means there's meal times and there's snack times. And they happen on a regular basis, and they're predictable. And if they didn't eat it this time, they'll have it at snack time. Kids get very used to this. But if you're making fish sticks for this kid and chicken nuggets for that kid, then you're inviting this sort of difficulty with eating. Joanne, do you have any other stuff about this?
Well, I want to just call out, a mom or more than one parent who is saying, what about if they want dessert? So if they don't eat any dinner, do they still get dessert? No. And in fact, while you are trying to move to a better routine, where you're getting more predictable eating behaviors, I'd get rid of dessert because it's treated as a reward or a punishment. You either, you can get it or you can't get access, fully depending on how much you eat. And that's because it's the parent who's decided how much you have to eat before you get that dessert. So I would not have dessert for a while. And, one of the things that's been rolling around in my head through these different kinds of problems, Ruth, is the idea of having a family meeting and having parents and children sit down together and talk about, so what are the rules? And I recently was meeting with a family with 5 and 6-year-old children. And they had this insight that every time they were going out into public, they would sit down with the kids and they would tell them what the rules were going to be. And their kids were model, like everybody thought they were fantastic. Then in the home, they're not talking about what the rules are because parents thought they knew them, but the kids' behavior suggested they didn't know what the rules were because all the time they were overstepping where parents wanted them to be compliant and cooperative. In fact, the kids were going, no, I don't want this, So we talked about a family meeting and sitting down together with some seriousness of purpose and some playfulness of purpose as well. And to invite parents and kids to talk about, the rule should be that we sit and talk and eat. George, what do you think the rule should be? What should we do at dinner? Yes. And George might say, we want to watch screens. And then you say, nope, screens are literally off the table.
Right.
We're not doing screens. That's going to be a rule. No screens at dinner. Okay. And so then you leave this with maybe 3 ideas that are going to be the boundary.
And an interesting exercise for families is to sit down with their kids and say, what are the rules in our family? And ask them.
Yeah.
And you might be amazed at what they think are rules and the rules that you think are rules that they don't know. And
Yep.
then, just as Joanne described, you can say, well, let's make sure we're all on the same page, and let's create some rules together. And what makes dinner nice, and what might be nice about dinner, and what agreements can we make? And if
Yeah.
you
And these kinds of conversations, I think, would go really well with kids that are 5 and above.
Yep.
With 2, 3, and 4-year olds, conversations need to be really simple. And parents need to, just the way you started, Ruth, you have to model
yeah,
what you want. So you can't bring screens to the table, and you can't jump up and answer, your phone.
and with young children, this could be 20 minutes. I mean, with young children, this can be 15 or 20 minutes of good, clean time. And no, it doesn't have to be like you have an hour-long dinner every night. Although, as they mature, that will change. I want to say something about treats. I don't know what Ellen Satter says about this. I should know by now. But I would say that one option is to say that if the child is brushing their teeth and they're eating a reasonably healthy diet, that you can say you get one treat a day. And that treat can be after dinner, or it can be, noontime, or here's your options or whatever. But trying to put some limit on that and having it be sort of objective versus dramatic, and make sure your what you call treats are okay with you. That whatever food is in your house shouldn't be off limits. Make sure that you're making choices that are good for them.
Yeah.
I always add, make sure you're not snacking before dinner. It helps if they're actually hungry. Well, I would make snack times, because the truth is that you got to pay attention to your kid. Because my daughter, for example, she was a skinny little kid, and when she came home from school was her most hungry time of the day. It was an irritating time because it was like 3:30 or 4 o'clock or something. But I knew that was the time I could offer her the best healthy food. So there was a snack time as soon as she came in, and it was developed. You just want to make your snack times and your meal times predictable, regular, and what works for your family. And of course, you go shopping, you ask the kid, which vegetables do you want to get? What should we get special this week? Do it collaboratively, do it as a family.
Yeah, and then the other piece to that is if your child has eaten a large snack, then I would have low expectations for how much they're going to eat at dinner. It's not a big problem.
Not
They
just
won't eat a big snack like that every day. And just as you said, Ruth, and if your child needs a big snack because they're depleted, I have a granddaughter who would not eat much at school. And so she would come home and eat a whole bowl of ramen, for example. And then she would still be hungry, and she'd be offered cucumbers and carrots. But it really not giving her additional filling foods
yeah,
that were high in sugar, for example.
kids difficulties may be getting bigger, and are ours. Whatever was a little fissure in your personality now probably feels like a big crack in your personality. Whatever was a little challenge for you in the past now might feel bigger. And we really want parents to understand that your emotional state is essential to your children's well-being, and you don't have to be with them every minute, as long as you can get support to keep them safe. It's really the quality of your interaction. We always say, put your oxygen mask on first. Make sure you're talking to other adults. Make sure you're physically moving and exercising in whatever way that looks. We actually have some classes with a health expert about exercising with your young children and figuring out how to build it into your relationship with them. But your well-being and your mental state and emotional state is really important. That means lean into your emotions, seek support, get connection, and figure out how to make your well-being a priority in this process.
Parents are the guides. And I like to say they need to be the driver of the car. Whether it's the mealtime car, it's the getting dressed car, it's the getting, it's how much do I use my screens car. It's parents who know how to drive. Kids don't know how to do this. With potty training, it's kids don't know how to use a potty. And yeah, sure, they observe and they learn. But if you are confident about what it is that you want them to do, and that might be 30 minutes of screen time a day. Give it to them in 2 doses. Give them a sheet that we're now calling a choice sheet, in which they get to choose what time of day they want to have that time. But it's not up to the kids to choose.
There's a class called Taming Tantrums that Joanne teaches, and we'll post a link to that class either in this right now, or we'll post it on the private page soon. And Joanne, probably, are there other classes you think are relevant in relation to taming tantrums and responding to emotional overload?
Oh, yeah. So we have a flash class called I Get So Irritated. And it's really all about parents and what they can learn from their own irritation. Irritation is not something you want to get rid of. You can't get rid of it. It's always going to happen in life. And so you look at it and you figure out, is this happening all the time? Am I, in fact, irritated much of the day? And that means that's your life stress. Or are you just occasionally irritated by a behavior or something that comes up in the day? And then your irritation is saying, oh, I want to change something. And you listen to it and you just spend a moment reflecting on it. Okay, I guess I need to do something different here. And that class is, it's very popular, and I highly recommend it. It's 10, 12 minutes long.
And we also have a class called Be Your Child's Calm Center, which is a full-length class, and we're going to be making that into a flash class soon. And that's another great way of thinking about this. And the person who posted about handling the tantrums also said resources for routines related to the tantrums. And I want to emphasize that having predictable routines, that doesn't mean things happen at the same time, but they happen in the same order. So we know that we have fun outside, then we have lunch, then we have rest time. It doesn't mean lunch has to be exactly at 12, but we know that, outside lunch and rest time happens in that order, and that makes 100% difference in that. I think, also for school age kids, if you have, even for kids like 3, 4, and 5, the class I teach called Be Your Child's Emotions Coach is a good class for learning how to respond to intense emotions. I have a very intense granddaughter, and we understand each other because we're both emotionally intense, and I just get her. And the thing she wants most is to just come down there and get it, and not need for her to be done with her upset. One of the big challenges with when young kids are very upset is we're always often trying to make it better, fix it, make it go away because it's so irritating. But as a grandparent, you're just there for them. And I just get down there and I just try to get and understand what this distress is about. And that's one of the most calming things you can do. It's a paradoxical intervention, but she makes perfect sense to me. Please use this group to post the kinds of live classes you'd like, the topics, the issues, and we will continue this. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks everyone.